Welcome to part 3 of our little podcast series on leash walking and the deeper communicative processes hidden behind it. Last week, we talked about the right form of leash training, and today I want to talk about the corpus delicti itself, the leash, the bond that connects us to our dogs. Last time, we discussed why true leash manners don't lie in blunt control, but in a clear, respectful relationship in which your dog asks and you respond. Today, I want to go even deeper and dedicate this episode to the actual tool itself, the leash, and its counterpart on the dog. Because that brings me to the collar, or the harness. What's the right choice there? Which leash is the best? Small spoiler, I have a very clear opinion on that, and it doesn't align with the usual TV trainers and feel-good dog coaches. I'll also tell you in detail why this might be the better choice for you and your dog.
Soul of a Dog, Mirror of a Man.
A podcast inspired by the book with the same name, written by Andreas Wojtaszek.
Last week I was out with Milla in the morning by the lake, not the forest for a change. The morning was still, nothing but the soft lapping of ducks on the water and the rustle of leaves beneath Milla's paws to keep us company. My girl trotted along beside me, stopping here and there to sniff at a tuft of grass. The leash hung in a loose, relaxed arc between us, a beautiful picture of calm and harmony. Then a woman appeared ahead of me, middle-aged with a little terrier that was lunging like a wound-up rubber ball on a flexi-lead. The cord whirred, first long, then short, jerking the dog back roughly again and again. As she got closer, I called out with a smile, "He's full of energy today," while Milla politely stopped to take stock of the situation. The woman sighed.
He's always like this. The second we're outside, he pulls like crazy. But with the Flexi leash, at least he can sniff wherever he wants. His name's Bobby, by the way.
I nodded sympathetically, watching Bobby lunge forward. The lead whirred, and then he was yanked to a halt by the automatic braking mechanism. The dog flinched slightly, wagged straight away, and started pulling again. An endless loop. Lunge, jerk, irritation, repeat. Bobby's owner gave a tired smile.
Sometimes I think he just doesn't get it.
But the problem wasn't the dog. The problem was her comfort, and the decision that came with it to use a Flexi lead. With every unpredictable piece of feedback from the Flexi lead, she was only confusing Bobby further. He simply couldn't understand why he had 5 meters of freedom one moment and only 2 the next, before being brought up short, abruptly and roughly, without his person saying a single word. No clear, "Hey," no deliberate loosening or tightening of the leash as a form of communication, just the same mechanical click, click on repeat. Arbitrary freedom and frustration. Milla, sitting calmly beside me, watched the spectacle with ears perked. I stroked her chest and thought back to our first walks. She had pulled 2 in the beginning, but every time the leash went taut, I stopped, gave a brief leash impulse as a nudge, and said a clear, "Hey." When she turned to look at me, I praised her enthusiastically. "Great job, good girl," and gave her a treat. That's how she learned. Pulling doesn't get me anywhere. A loose leash and checking in with my person, that's what works. Clear, consistent. No surprise stops out of nowhere. The woman with the terrier was already reaching into her treat pouch for the second time.
He only reacts to treats,
she explained, tossing the dog a piece of dry something at his feet, while the Flexi lead whirred out again and snapped back into place. The terrier gulped it down on a tight lead and immediately shot off again in every direction. I would have loved to tell her that it's not about reward or punishment, it's about clarity. Maybe you've already seen it clearly through this little story. A Flexi lead gives no clarity. It sometimes rewards pulling with freedom, sometimes with a hard jerk, and the dog learns only this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Might as well keep trying. As we said our goodbyes, I watched Bobby hurl himself into the lead one more time. The woman sighed and unlocked it. The cycle of pulling and abrupt stopping went on, round and round, without end. Milla, meanwhile, was calmly sniffing at a root, her own leash hanging loosely, looking almost like a casual accessory. No struggle, no drama. Just a dog who had understood how the game works, and who was in conversation with me. And I thought, how much easier would it be if we stopped seeing equipment as the solution, and started talking to our dogs again, not through jerk machines, but through clear, fair leadership. Because in the end, every dog wants the same thing: security, and a person they can understand. If this story felt familiar, if you recognized yourself in Bobby or in his owner, then you already know where to start. And if something in this resonated with you, a like on this video tells me to keep going. It takes 1 second, and it means more to me than you'd think. So, today is all about leashes. Which one should you use, and in which situation? Let's start with the most important one, the training lead. It's the Swiss Army knife of leashes, the one you can and should use in most situations with your dog. A training lead is usually 2 to 3 meters long and has multiple rings, so you can adjust the length flexibly using a carabiner clip. This doesn't happen automatically at the push of a button. You have to actively think about what length makes sense in the moment. I'll come back to why that matters. With it, you can give your dog a clear boundary on the sidewalk while offering a little more freedom in the park, where it's safer. It allows for direct, nuanced communication. A slight give signals freedom, a gentle pull gives clear direction. It's your extended arm, your direct line to your dog. In a busy city center, it gives you the control you need to keep your dog and others safe, while at the same time, giving your dog the certainty that you're in charge, and that he can feel safe. The second leash you absolutely need to get is what's called the meter lead. Go ahead and guess how long it is. That's right, 1 meter. The important thing here is to get one that deliberately has no loop at the end you hold. With the meter lead, you can train with your dog perfectly in controlled environments. It doesn't get in the way because its length is ideal for exercises. You don't have to constantly think about what to do with the leftover leash when your dog is walking at heel. For exercises that involve some off-leash work, you can simply drop the leash. That's exactly why it must have no loop, so the dog can't accidentally step through it with his back legs while running and injure himself. Because it's so short, it doesn't bother your dog when he's dragging it behind him after you've let it go. And conversely, you have your dog back under control in an instant if needed, because the leash is permanently attached to him and far easier to grab than, say, his collar. The meter lead is primarily a training leash. One more tip. If you can't find a loopless meter lead at your local pet store, one with a loop will do just fine. Take a pair of scissors when you get home and snip. Loop gone. The third leash you absolutely need, until your dog reliably comes when called in every situation, is the long line. It's the tool for freedom within a controlled framework. It comes in various lengths, 5, 10, 20 meters. I'd recommend a 10-meter line. It allows your dog to explore a wider radius, sniff around, follow his nose, without you losing control. The long line is the perfect tool for training recall. It's indispensable for all distance work. And of course, it also keeps dogs safe who can't yet run off leash or aren't allowed to. What's important to understand is this: it's a training tool that requires a great deal of patience and technique, because it teaches not only your dog, but you too, to act with foresight, to read the environment, and to react before the line goes taut. Every meter you let out demands twice the awareness, because while your dog is sniffing and roaming around, you have to constantly read your surroundings. Spot the cyclist coming around the bend, the jogger with headphones, the unfamiliar dog by the path. And you need to keep your dog in sight at all times and be able to read his body language. One moment too slow, and prey drive kicks in. 1 second of inattention, and a conflict erupts. On a long line, that can have serious consequences. For your dog, the long line becomes a trap if it wraps around his legs or a tree. Sudden falls, torn ligaments, or painful abrasions are the result. And for you, a line that snaps taut in an instant becomes a trip hazard or whips against your legs with tremendous force. In fact, my Rottweiler Gandhi once managed to break my ankle on a long line during a training session. The line had wrapped around my foot and he ran straight into it at full speed with his 52 kilos. So please, be especially careful when handling your dog on a long line. The level of responsibility is enormous, and it demands your full attention at all times. The long line raises so many questions, and every dog is different. What's your experience with it? Has it been a game changer for you, or has it caught you off guard too? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories and learn from your experiences too. That's what makes this community so great. We all grow together. And finally, I want to address the Flexi-lead, also known as a retractable leash. You see them everywhere, unfortunately. It promises freedom, but what it actually delivers is the exact opposite: confusion, risk, and broken communication. I have to say this plainly. The Flexi-lead is the worst possible choice in every conceivable situation, for dog and handler alike. I know that's a statement that will rub some people the wrong way, but the facts speak for themselves. Imagine you're a child playing in the garden. You're running around happily, full of energy, just discovering something exciting. Suddenly, without warning, without any apparent reason, someone grabs you roughly by the collar and yanks you back without a word. Over and over and over again. Sometimes you're just about to catch a ball. Sometimes you just want to run over to a friend. And every time, you're stopped abruptly and painfully. How would you feel? Yes, that's exactly how your dog feels on a Flexi-lead. He will never truly learn what a loose leash means, because the tension is always there, constant and unpredictable. Your dog learns, if I pull, I get more leash. Sometimes. The mechanism of the lead reinforces exactly the behavior you don't want: pulling. He doesn't learn to orient himself around you, his person, because the leash length is always different. There's no constant. That creates insecurity and frustration on both sides. Studies have shown that the unpredictable tension of a Flexi-lead, which occurs constantly with this type of leash, can cause significant, lasting stress in dogs and completely prevents the development of relaxed leash manners. But it's also a safety issue. And here, the arguments against the Flexi-lead turn into serious warnings. Most of them have a thin cord by design, often barely visible. That's a dangerous trip hazard for pedestrians, cyclists, and other dogs. I've personally witnessed a child fall over a Flexi-lead and get hurt, and a cyclist who nearly face-planted because he didn't see the cord. There are rope burns and cuts to hands and legs when the line wraps uncontrollably around fingers or limbs. And worst of all, The sudden, brutal, jerking braking force at the end of the line can cause serious injuries to your dog. Whiplash, spinal damage, laryngeal injuries, and in extreme cases, even fractures. Enormous forces act on the sensitive neck area in those moments. A dog running at full speed who is brutally stopped by the automatic mechanism at the end of a 10-meter flexi-lead experiences a force that most of us can't even begin to imagine. It doesn't matter whether he's wearing a collar or a harness, and it doesn't stop at physical injuries. This constant state of danger creates fear and trauma in dogs that can permanently destroy their trust in you, their person. Flexi-leads are always just an illusion of freedom, one that regularly leads to suffering and confusion. The only reason people buy this leash is convenience. The desire to not have to be constantly present, to not have to consciously steer every single moment. People long for the uncomplicated, effortless walk where the dog tires himself out while they mindlessly scroll through their phone or stare at the sky. Another beautiful fantasy. More wishful thinking. Because in reality, with every whirring meter of cord, the distance between you and your dog grows. Not physically, but in the quality of the relationship. You sacrifice the chance for real communication, for that magical dialogue of glances, subtle cues, and shared rhythm. Instead, you hand over the lead to a mechanical system that confuses your dog and teaches him to work against you. And the most heartbreaking part? We know it, really. Most people feel it in those moments when their dog is jerked to a stop and gives them that reproachful look. They sense that something isn't right here. But most ignore these warning signs because the comfort has already become too powerful. Because they tell themselves, it can't be that bad. Let me say it again, clearly. Yes, it is that bad. Not just for leash manners, for everything. For the trust you're squandering, for the bond that's slowly withering. For the dog who, at the end of the day, wants nothing more than a person who leads him safely and clearly. The Flexi-lead isn't a tool that should ever be attached to a dog. It's a metaphor for our desire to hand off responsibility, for our fear of being consistent, for the convenience of not having to train our dog because somehow it all kind of works with the leash anyway. And for the sad truth that we sometimes prefer to trust machines over our own instincts. But there is a way out. The courage to let go of convenience. To throw the Flexi-lead away for good, and to relearn what it means to truly be present for this one creature by our side who trusts and loves us unconditionally. So leave that leash on the shelf. Its very real risks far outweigh any perceived benefit. If you've listened this far, I already know something about you. You take this seriously. You genuinely want to understand what your dog needs. That's exactly who I make these videos for. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single one. Your dog will thank you for it. In the end, it's not just about which leash we use. It's about how we communicate with our dog and what kind of relationship we build with him. That's why I'd love for more people to understand that the leash is not just a piece of equipment, but a symbol of the connection between human and dog. A connection built on trust, respect, and love. Evening has fallen, and you're out walking with your dog. The world has turned down its volume, as if reminding you that every story eventually comes to an end, including this walk with your dog. The leash loose in your hand, it's now little more than a delicate thread connecting your souls. And as you watch the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the trees, letting the world sink into a deep blue silence, you feel what this is really all about. It's not about perfect technique, not about control, not even about obedience. It's about that one quiet moment when your dog looks at you and you look at him. And in that moment, you both understand everything about each other. In that gaze, your whole world reveals itself. A silent promise between two beings who have chosen to walk through every high and every low together. Because in the end, leash manners are nothing more than a dance. A dance in which you lead, and your dog follows, not out of compulsion, but out of understanding. The leash is your physical connection, but the soul of this dance is your relationship. The wordless language that is more powerful than any language human beings have ever spoken. Because it is ancient. Because at its core, everyone already speaks it and doesn't have to learn it from scratch. We simply need to remember it and make ourselves turn off our ears in order to hear it loud and clear. And so your walk comes to an end, not in pulling, not in correcting, but in one shared breath that drifts quietly and gently into the falling night, yet never truly disappears. Because real connection never ends.
Soul of a Dog, Mirror of a Man. A podcast inspired by the book with the same name. You can find the book on Amazon.